Hey, it's Jess, and welcome to Becoming Heartstrong. I'm a social entrepreneur, speaker, mother, and business owner, and I'm here because I believe in you, and I want you to live your full potential. My mission with this podcast is simple: to offer you perspectives, tools, and inspiration to help you live with more courage, rebuild after setbacks, and strengthen yourself from the inside out. So each week, I talk to thought leaders, authors, experts, and everyday amazing people who share their stories and outlooks that help you get from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow. Let's get started. Do you ever feel like you have something great inside of you, but you just aren't sure how to bring it to life? Do you ever need some clarity on how to get from where you are to where you want to be? I'm so excited to share a free guide I created just for you. This tool has helped me in my own times of struggle and doubt. It's called Your Future Self Guide. This mini course includes a future self visualization I recorded, a series of journal questions, and some insights from me about overcoming self-doubt and embracing self-leadership. You can download it for free at jessicalindberg.com/futureself. That's jessicalindberg.com/futureself. Let's get back to the show. So today's guest is Larissa Salazar. And I'm really excited to share Larissa with you today because she is a coach that I am working with. And I always love to bring you things that are helping me in my real life. And so today, Larissa Salazar is joining us. She is a highly sought after personal brand strategist and a presenter at Brand Builders Group. With passion for helping individuals establish mission-driven brands, Larissa has quickly emerged as one of the fastest rising strategists within the organization. One of the things that Larissa is really great at is she's really great at asking good questions and getting really important information out of me and out of her clients that we know intuitively, but is sometimes difficult to bring to the forefront. And so today we're going to talk about the importance of building a personal brand, what a personal brand is, why it matters. And you might be listening and thinking to yourself, well, what does this matter to me? But this is a podcast about how we grow through our life challenges and how we take those challenges and create impact in the world around us. And so many of you listening have a story, have something that is important to you. You're a purpose-driven person, you're a mission-driven person, and you're like, how in this noisy world do I get my story, my message, my ideas out? And so Larissa is going to help you with that today. And so Larissa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jess. I am so lucky to be here having a conversation with you. I love working with you as one of my clients. And so being able to be a part of what you're building with the podcast, with your collective, just different things like that, it's really an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. The feeling is absolutely mutual. And so I want to start out with talking about what is a personal brand, because I think that different people have different ideas about what that means. So what do you and Brand Builders Group consider to be a personal brand?
It's a great question. And I think people hear the term personal brand and they say they don't want one. I don't want a personal brand. I don't need a personal brand, or I don't want to be in like the spotlight or the limelight. But the truth of the matter is, whether people realize it or not, everybody has a personal brand. And we're just using new terminology that hasn't been really in the marketplace over the last 15, 20 years. What a personal brand is, it is a digitization of your reputation. And when somebody in the business world or an entrepreneur hears the word reputation, they quickly raise their hand and they say, oh yeah, I'm known for something, or I have a good reputation in my industry. But they aren't quick to say, yes, I have a personal brand. And so we look at those two things, one and the same. Your personal brand is your reputation, and vice versa. So it is a newer concept to some people. And so they don't want one, but whether they want one or not, they have one. And when we say it's time to create your personal brand, what we're really inviting you into is to be intentional with how you show up, because you're showing up either way. And so you have an opportunity, a choice to be intentional with the things you do, the things you say, and what you become known for.
I love that. And I think sometimes people think, I was on a podcast the other day and someone said the currency of this generation or current generation is fame, and people want to be quote unquote famous. And there's also, older generations who don't like that at all. They
Right.
they sort of shy away from that. And I was talking about someone the other day, and I was like, I don't think it's about fame. I think it's about influence. I think if you're a person
Mm,
who has a story or something you feel that you're here to do, some very important work. Like I always say, I'm like, I could care less if I'm ever famous, but I definitely want to be a person of influence because I know that there
yeah.
is some work for me to do. And so, can you talk a little bit about maybe how different age groups or generations see a personal brand and sort of dispelling some of those myths that they might think?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually in 2021, 2022, Brand Builders Group did a national research study, and we call it the Trends in Personal Branding, where we interviewed and took sample questions and sizes from people all over the US in different age demographics to see how they responded to this idea of personal branding. We learned a lot of very interesting tidbits and how people engage with businesses and different things like that. And what is interesting is most millennials came back, older millennials came back and said that they trust their friends the most with where they purchase, where they engage with business, things like that. And they look for those kind of referrals or suggestions from their friends.
Mm.
And it's because their friends or their family members have had good experiences with certain types of businesses. We're talking lawyers, doctors, hair salon owners, things like that. You don't go to Google and say, who's the best hair salon by my house? You call your friends. You call your friends because they've had a good experience or you liked the service or the product they engaged with and purchased. And that's how people are being moved to engage in business nowadays. But the truth is, it's been like that for a really long time. If you look at business growth over the last 50 years, you didn't go online to Google and say, who do I work with? You called your friend. You wrote your friend. You went down to the local grocery store and said, "Hey, do you know somebody that I should do business with?" And that's the reputation piece. And so we saw that now people still want that kind of interaction. They still want those types of referrals. They still want the kind of testimonials of somebody saying, yes, they do good business and they're good people. We're just now taking it to a digital ecosystem. You can now find recommendations, you can now find testimonials online, but it's all tied back to the reputation of the business. And so we have all sorts of different numbers that prove this. But one of the most interesting things that came about from this study was that people are more likely to purchase products from companies that they believe in the values, like personal values, political values, different things of that sort from a company owner.
Mm.
So we kind of use the example of the owner of Spanx.
Mm.
It's like
Good.
the brand, you know the product that they sell. And lots of companies sell the same types of products, but you purchase from them because you know the owner. You know what she stands for. You know what she believes in. And so you continue to send business to a certain company. And that is one of it. That's just tried and true. That's how people do business nowadays.
Yeah, and so the importance of it's not the importance of having those testimonials and having people share how they experienced working with you is so important. And also how important within that is authenticity because I
Mm-hmm.
think it's easy to go online and have a persona, which we all need to have and do have, but also like we want to have that online experience translate to an offline experience. And I think that's an also really important part of building a personal brand is making sure that there is that synergy or with the authenticity that it follows. I was just and I thought about that because I was cleaning out a drawer the other day and I came across a note from someone that came to a retreat that I hosted, and
Mm-hmm.
she said to me, she wrote me a really sweet note, and she was like, hey, I you were so lovely online, but I didn't know if you were going to be that person in real life. So I was a little nervous when I came to this. And she's like, and she's like, you're the same person. And it was such a nice compliment, but it was also a reminder to me, like how important it is to build a brand and to have a persona, but to also have that align with who you actually are in real life.
You said that perfectly. We always ask people, like, what is your superpower? Like,
Mm,
truly evaluate who you are and what is your superpower, because all of us are living in a world where industries are jam-packed with people and jam-packed with people, jam-packed with opportunities, and there is a coach, there is an author, there is a speaker on every corner, right? So we often get asked a lot, like, is there space for me and my brand in this industry? I get that question all the time as a strategist. Like, will I ever make it in this sector? I want to be for example, a life coach. There are a million life coaches.
mhm,
Will I ever make it? And I have to tell my clients all the time, yes, you will make it because there is only one you. And there is a client out there who could learn from any life coach, but they are going to be impacted and moved by you.
mhm,
Your vote, your voice, your experiences, your unique lens or take on how you overcome problems and situations. And if you're trying so hard to compete with every other life coach out there, you're never going to win. But if you are really intentional and really authentic with who you are and how you life coach,
mhm,
then people actually can be drawn to that authenticity and stick around.
mhm,
It We see it all the time. People are trying to compete with their competitors.
mhm,
And so they show up in a way that is a bad reflection or bad mirror of somebody else's brand and superpower.
mhm,
And that's how people fail.
mhm. So it's just about being you and talking through your lens. And so, like, how do you think about looking at competitors? Because that's an
Hmm.
interesting comment, because a lot of times in marketing or when you're doing brand positioning or anything, it's like, who are your competitors? And, what are the threats to the marketplace for you? And so it's like maybe important to know that, but maybe we're over focusing on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, I always say look at your competitors because we want to know what's selling, but your product's never going to be the same as your competitor, your product or your service or your offering in general. So
Mhm,
it's healthy naturally to look at your competitors. What we want to try to avoid is duplicating something because you think it works for them. And
mhm,
so from and when I say you think it works for them, we see, as all people do online, a pretty polished version of everything, right? So if we think we see our competitor selling a product and we think they're selling it really well, unless you're inside their financials, unless you're inside their sales team, you can't really tell on whether or not it's working. But they may just be doing a really good job at marketing something.
mhm,
And there is a difference between being really good at marketing and having a really good product, or having really good conversions and sales, or having like a really great impact on people. And so I always tell people to say, like, to look at what is the longevity of something that people are putting out into the world. Like, truly, is it a one-stop shop product that you see it boom and then it just kind of fizzles, or are they selling something like a membership where you're like, man, they're playing the long game, so
mhm,
there must be room for it in the marketplace. um, so I always just say look at those kinds of comparisons or even inspirations of your competitors through really um, cautious glasses, is kind
mhm,
of how I would say it, because what works for them may not work for you, and what works for you isn't going to work for them. Um, but you have to really know who your audience is and who the right client for you is going to be, because their target market and your target market could be totally different.
mhm,
And so, like, one of the things that we actually do is we make our clients pick a person, not a general target market where it's like, I help women between the ages of 30 and 40. Even that, while it may feel specific, it's not really specific. We want you to know so deeply who the person it is that you serve so you can serve that kind of person really well. Um, we always say you're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. And that's always where I tell my clients to start. Where were you 5 years ago? Where were you 15 years ago? And really dig into who that person is.
Well, one of the things that really is powerful about what you just said, and when I was at the accelerator meeting for Brand Builders Group back in January, we talked about this. It's when we think of a target market, we so often want to talk about the demographics of someone, right? Their age, their gender, where they live, maybe how many children they have, what their job is. And those are such a two-dimensional, not even one-dimensional, really form of a person. And while that's important, what we talked about is that the psychographics of someone is even more
Mm,
important than what that is. And I think, especially in the world today, like women 25 to 35 are all very different people.
so different.
They may not believe the same things, think the same things, vote the same way, believe, whatever. That's too general. And so they really encourage us to think about the psychographics or the way that your
Mm,
client thinks. And it may be, you may have, if you really dig into that, that person could be 25 or they could be 40. That person could be, living in Florida or living in Ohio. And so that was really helpful to me to really think about how the person thinks and what they're feeling and what they're wondering about, what they're struggling with, how important that is for when you're building your brand. That's the person you want to talk to. And like you said, it's so often the person that we used to be.
it's so that's so true. Some of the favorite questions I have for clients when we're trying to figure out their avatar is what keeps this person up at night.
Mm,
Because that reveals a ton about where a person's mind is, heart is, where their struggles are. So, like, what do you truly think keeps your ideal avatar or client up at night?
mm,
What do they wish they had more of? What do they wish they had less of? Where do they spend majority of their time? What do they do for fun? People are like, does this really matter? Does it doesn't seem like it directly correlates to my offering, is usually what I
mm,
hear. And I said, I always respond with, well, if they're going to buy anything from you, whether it be a service or a product or anything else, you have to know where else their brain is. Because if they are involved in other things, if they are paying for other things, that affects their wallet, which ultimately affects what they're willing to spend with you. And if you can understand the things that don't relate to your product, then you can justify and explain why your service or product is important to the situation they're in.
mhm,
And so it's so relevant to look at all of those small details. Um, but it also gets down to the heart of the brand. And like you said, it takes you away from the age range demographic, 25 to 35, because that ultimately isn't what's important. I like to sometimes describe it as like, what is the ideal point that you would like to meet your avatar in that's not age specific?
mm,
So, are they 5 years into a new career path? 5 years into a new career path could look like somebody at 55 who decided to change careers at 50, or somebody at 30 who decided to change careers at 25.
mm,
I want to look at 5 years into your career path. And what that does, it's still a very specific person who's going through a very specific transition, who might have very specific needs. But it doesn't lock you into a age range or like very one-dimensional demographic.
mhm,
And so I always tell people, look at it from a different angle. When you're describing your avatar, look at it from all angles,
mhm.
because you can reach such interesting like outlooks and points of life that are far more impactful than just looking at somebody's age.
Hmm. That's so good. And I think that's so relevant for the world that we're living in
So
today. And so I'm curious, for people listening, they might say, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't have a podcast. I don't want to be an author. Like, I work at a corporate company. I'm a lawyer. I'm in business. I'm in marketing and finance. Does a personal brand matter for those people too?
it does. And I think there are a lot of ways that you can leverage this when you're working a corporate 9 to 5 or a standard 9 to 5. I think the misinterpretation of a personal brand is that you are automatically going to be selling your own product or service. And that's not wrong. You can go in that direction with a personal brand. Like most personal brands are doing some sort of offering of their own, or it at least starts that way. So they're either selling like products, they're either engaging in ads and affiliate services of some sort. They're putting out information based products, which are similar to like ebooks, courses, things like that, which we see a lot of online. A lot of people sell courses. They do any sort of like deals. And so we look at this as like, if you're getting any sort of money advance, cash advance, this looks like a traditional book deal, a movie deal, sponsorships, things like that. And then we have what we call services, right? And so services can be you as an individual trading time for dollars, but services can also look like the offer that a corporate like company offers as well. And so you as a personal brand, depending on what your role is in said company, you can always drive leads, drive like recognition, brand recognition to that corporate company, which ultimately raises their revenue or their brand. And then you still get paid out for it, or you still make an impact from that. And so the best practical example I can kind of give you guys and how this works is the founder of our company, Rory Vaden, or even his wife, AJ Vaden, co-founder. They both have personal brands. They both are owners of a company that has 50 employees, right? So it's a smaller size company, but it's still more corporate than just having I am the brand, this is the thing I sell, right? So they both independently go out and speak on topics that are unrelated to Brand Builders Group. Yes, they talk personal branding, but they also talk on leadership, they talk on sales, they talk on discipline, all sorts of different things. And they leverage their reputation and expertise in those areas to drive people, to drive leads to our corporate company. Mm-hmm. They are sending leads directly to their primary business model. So we always tell people, if you are in a corporate setting and you want to enhance the business brand, you want to drive more leads, you as the human are going to be the strongest way to get people in that door. Because if people trust you, you send them anywhere and they'll buy what you're telling them is good.
Hey there, it's Jess, and we're taking a brief pause to highlight this show's sponsor, the Heartstrong Collective. It's more than just a nonprofit. It's a social movement I founded to inspire people worldwide to embody resilience and grow through challenges. Through the Heartstrong Collective, we're dedicated to empowering caregiving families, investing in the next generation, and leaving the world just a little bit better than we found it. To learn more about our mission and how you can get involved, visit us at theheartstrong.com. So one of the things at Brand Builders Group that you talk about with your clients and you work with us on is that it's really important to identify the problem that you solve. And so many times in business, it's like, well, I do this and I do that and I do this and I do that. And we're not specific, or niche is kind of a word I use, enough. And so why is it important to identify the problem that you solve, and how do people do that?
Yeah, so we look at most personal brands that come to Brand Builders Group. They already are engaging in some sort of business. It's very rare that somebody comes to us and they're like, I'm starting something from scratch. I've never had a job before, right? Like that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're already engaging in some sort of business. And so we actually don't even touch on business model and how you're making money until after we identify the problem you solve. Because we never want to link the problem that you're solving directly to your company or business. We really believe that the problem you solve is the problem you solve personally, it's the problem you solve professionally. It all ties together and it's all the same because it's you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can kind of get our clients to see it from that angle, that is how we are able to grow outside of a niche in the future.
Hmm.
Because if you solve a problem today, you solve that same problem 20 years from now, no matter what business you're in. And people get caught up in saying, the problem I solve is specific for this offering or specific for this business. But the truth is, companies get sold, offers change,
Mm-hmm.
things end, but you are still the personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are the personal brand. And I think that's why personal branding is so important when you have a company, when when you're a part of a business, because if you leave or you sell, your reputation goes with you.
Mm-hmm.
The people who trusted you there hopefully will trust you in your next venture. And so you can't do that unless you're really clear on the problem you solve for people. So it's really interesting. And I know you're kind of in the mix of you have the nonprofit, but you also are trying to grow your personal brand. And so when we're like getting to the bottom of what problem does Jess solve, I would almost coach you through saying, take a step back from those offerings and tell me, why did you start the nonprofit to begin with? Like, what in your heart of hearts is the reason that this what needed to be built?
Mm-hmm.
You built it a certain way, but you didn't know what that was going to look like 5 years down the road. But there was a need and a calling on your heart that was like, this has to be built. And so when we can get down to, I think this is the problem, right? I always give examples, and we won't tell everybody the problem you solve, but like an example of, I solve the problem of overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a really easy, simple problem that we present for people. I solve the problem of overwhelm, and I would ask somebody like, why do you, or how do you know how to solve that problem? And they may answer something like, well, when I was younger, I used to get really overwhelmed. And so I taught myself how to make a plan that got me from point A to point B. And then I realized I started teaching it to my friends, right? And now I realize that I solve overwhelm in a business setting. Cool. You did it when you were 12, when you were overwhelmed, and taught it to your friends. You then took that to a business setting. You taught it to leaders, and in 20 years, you might be teaching it to grandmas.
Hmm.
And that's not because of the offering that you created, but because you as a person have a really cool lens on how to overcome overwhelm. And that is what we're trying to do for our clients, is to get down to the bare bones of, what problem do I just know how to solve, because it like comes out of me so naturally, and then we can adapt it to any business that you're in.
Mm-hmm. I love that because, excuse me, it's kind of like, when they say the why doesn't change, but the what can change.
Yes,
And,
exactly.
I'm even kind of going through that personally of, the problem that I solve is pretty consistent, but how I want to solve it can change. And I think
Yes.
that's really important because people get stuck in they think that if they want to change the what, that somehow the why is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's what's so powerful about the way that you take people through this, is because it's sort of just innate in you. And so
Mm-hmm.
like a good example I'll just give is like my husband worked as a corporate lawyer for 15 years, and he's recently started his own practice. And we were kind of going through his transition, and it was sort of fortuitous that I was working with Brand Builders Group because I was asking him some of the same questions about, and what we really realized was that his why, or what the problem that he solves, is the same. He just
Mm,
wants to do it in a different way. And the other piece that was really interesting is that the environment that he was in became an environment where he couldn't solve the problem that he solves in the way he wanted to help people. And
mm,
so it doesn't mean he's a different person. It just means that he needed to change the environment and the way that he did it. And arguably, like, I think he's going to be much more successful in the environment that he's creating because it's more set
Mm.
up for success for him. So
for
I think
him.
a lot of times when people, just people I know in my life that I think of, it's like you're in this role in your life and you have these unique experiences in this unique lens. Like, it doesn't always have to only be filtered through this particular job or this particular company or the way this particular organization works. Like, it can change. And I think that's
Hmm.
what's exciting about being a human. And that's also what's important about how you're teaching people what problem they solve.
Totally. Yeah. One of the other pieces that we look at when we're identifying the one problem we solve is people's uniqueness, right? We kind of prompt that with the superpower and like how do you uniquely solve problems?
Mhm.
Um, One of the funnest, I think the uniqueness is always so interesting because people are like, well, my uniqueness is, for example, systems. And it's like, no, systems are a tool. What, how, how do you solve problems? And I love when people land on like the uniqueness of perspective, for example. And it's like, man, if your uniqueness and how you solve anything is perspective, you can take that into any kind of business. If that's truly what your unique superpower is, it's like I can take my uniqueness of perspective and use it anywhere. We
Mhm.
also describe the uniqueness as what would you like be really proud to be known for or known as if somebody had to describe you. These are all like indicators of a really clear and good uniqueness. It's like, man, if somebody walked around and said, Larissa has great perspective in any job that she's in, she always has a different outlook, she's always problem solving, I'd be like, my reputation is on the right track. Like, that's all I
Mhm.
wanted to be known for. And that was just an example,
Sure.
but that's how a personal brand carries.
Mhm.
It's no matter what offer you're engaging in, your uniqueness, what you're really good at, how you approach problems is yours. Nobody can take that from you.
So
You can
what
take that anywhere.
so what would you say to someone who's like, well, I'm multi-passionate.
Mm,
I like a lot of different things. And I would say, transparently, I'm one of those people. I have a lot
yeah.
of different interests. And I have my own answer for this, but I want to ask you how, because we can't be everything. And I think in this
Mm-hmm.
online world, they say you should have a niche, which we
Mm-hmm.
can talk about what we think about that.
Yeah.
But I think that that is something that people get stuck on a lot.
Mm-hmm.
um I'm multi-passionate. I have a lot of things that I want to do, things that I think about, like, how do I know what to build my platform on, and how do I move that forward? How do you respond to that?
Yeah. And I want to come back to growing our platforms
Oh,
as well, because that's an
yes, we got
interesting
to talk that.
conversation.
I want to talk about that too.
I love that. But when people say, I don't want to niche down, it's a very it's a hot battle. People are very opinionated on the idea of like niching down, and I think it does tie to like the avatar session
Mhm.
like conversation as well. But we have a framework, a teaching that we cover. It's almost the first teaching people hear when they come into Brand Builders Group, and it's called Sheehan's Wall. And so it's this idea that there is a invisible wall that all personal brands come up against. And on one side, you are unknown, and on the other side, you are known. And every personal brand is trying to metaphorically break through this wall. And the problem that people have is that they're talking about too many topics. They have too many profiles, business models. Maybe they're trying to just reach too many people. So, in theory, you're putting all of this scattered effort and you're throwing it up against the wall at all different spots. We kind of described it as like if you were going out into the woods to chop down a tree and you swung the axe and you hit the tree at all different angles, the tree would never fall, right? But if you had intentional effort and you really hit the tree at the exact same spot over and over and over, eventually the tree would fall, right? It's the same idea here in this teaching. If you niche down and you get really focused to become an expert or share your expertise in one particular area, you will eventually break through the wall. People will know you for something. Now, people think it stops there. People think that, okay, I'm known for this thing and now I'm stuck. But the truth of the matter is that once you break to the other side of the wall and you become known, you have these people's trust, they will now listen to anything you have to say, whether you realize it or not. And that's where the multi-passionate people really get to shine. Gain trust, break through, open up, add more things to that list of expertise, talk about more topics. The best example I can give of this, in a sense that everybody will understand, is Amazon. Okay, so if we think way back when, Amazon started only by selling books, and most people that you tell that to, at least younger people, wouldn't believe you. They would be like, Amazon, there's no way Amazon only sold books, right? And it's because now Amazon is so trusted. You can buy groceries, you can buy clothing, you can buy wrapping paper,
Anything, yeah.
you can buy literally anything on Amazon. And if you can't find it on Amazon, you're just not looking hard enough,
Right.
right? And most people get anywhere from 2 to 6 Amazon packages to their front door a week, right? And it's all sorts of products. But if they had not started with really intentional effort to say, man, we're going to sell books and we're going to sell them good, and we're going to be reliable and trusty and fast, and we're going to offer ease and convenience to the shopper to where they don't ever have to leave their house. If they had not done that well with their first product they were trying to sell, nobody would trust them to send you groceries. Like, it wouldn't happen. And so they hit the wall over and over and over until they had enough people that were on board with Amazon to now they sell everything. If you had asked me years ago if I would ever buy groceries online from a delivery service to my door, I would be like, no. But Amazon got me to trust them. Same with everybody else. And so when we say niche down, at least in brand builders world, we're telling you to niche down that way. We're telling you to be very trusted in one problem that you solve, in one area of expertise. So then you can continue to expand. And then you already have like a following of people who are like, she's the one. You can trust Jess with anything.
So how long does it take? Because if you're listening, you might think, well, how do I get from the books to the groceries? What does that look like for a personal brand? And I know everyone's different, but how do you at Brand Builders Group, and you as Larissa, who works with people all over the country, think about that question?
Yeah, so there's a couple things to look at. We describe this as kind of a push and a pull. So when you're on the side of unknown, everything will feel like a push. And this is just the easiest way for you to start to evaluate how your business is running. You are pitching, you are looking for leads, you may be cold calling, you may be constantly asking for referrals. It's a push to get the business up and running. You'll know that you've broken through the wall when it feels like a pull. People are coming to you. You don't have to go and pitch yourself. You don't have to beg, is a strong word, but you don't have to beg for business because you are so well known that people are like, I need you to come in and do this for me. And that feels a little bit different for everybody based on what they want their business to look like. So if you are a solo one-man band kind of coach and you say, I have the capacity to serve 20 clients really well, you're going to know when you've made it through when your book of business is always busy with 15 to 20 people because you know your capacity is at 20. And so you really have to ask yourself as an entrepreneur, as a brand, as a company, what is our capacity and how close am I getting to that, and with what kind of ease is it happening in?
That's a really good way to answer that. That is so unique to each individual. So let's talk platforms, because this is
Yeah.
always like a hot button and a fun topic to talk about. And I think it's a really overwhelming topic for a lot of people. What is your platform? So this is what I want you want to know. Like, what's our platform and how do you build one and does one matter? And so let's start by talking about like what does Brand Builders Group, what do you, Larissa, think of when you think of a platform?
Yeah. So if we're talking like digital platform, which equates to followers and
Mhm.
things like that, our co-founder AJ Vaden always says you don't need millions of followers to make millions of dollars.
Mhm.
And most people who do have millions of followers online are actually not making a ton of money
Mhm.
because they don't have a strategy and they don't really know how to convert those people into buyers, or they just don't have a monetization strategy at all. They don't know what they're selling, they don't know what they're engaging with. So when I talk about platform growth with individuals, I really have to tell them pump the brakes. The digital ecosystem will tell you you need to be on every platform, you need to be on it every single day, you need to be aiming for followers and followers and followers, and that's just simply not true. It goes back to your avatar and asking yourself, where does my avatar go to get the kind of information I'm going to be sharing? So, your avatar might live on LinkedIn and they go to LinkedIn because they want to learn more about X, right? Some
Mhm.
people would be like, my avatar lives on Instagram because they love that platform. And I know that's where they're getting information about being a good mom, right? And so it's really saying, what, where does my avatar live? And where do they get the type of information that I want to be sharing with them? And so, I mean, TikTok has blown up so much over the last couple of years. And people are like, do I need to be on TikTok? And they're like, tell me flat out, do I need to be on TikTok? And my answer to that is your avatar on TikTok?
Mhm.
Are they spending their time scrolling on TikTok to learn about making food? If the answer is yes, then yes, you should be there. If the answer is no, then you don't have to be there. Don't overwhelm yourself with more to do lists just because somebody says you must, right? So that's number one. The next thing is that people are always trying to go viral. They're like, if I go viral, this will be the solution to my business not
Mhm.
making any money. Again, it's not true. I, like me personally, not as a strategist, just me as Larissa the human, I have gone viral on TikTok like 3 times in the past 9 months and like 4 million views on
Wow.
TikTok. And I wasn't trying. I wasn't talking about personal branding. I wish I had been. But those videos have only turned into about 1,700 followers, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things, millions and millions of views that only gave me 1,700 followers, and I have made all of 4 cents. And I'm not lying. I wish I could show you the numbers. 4 cents. And it's like I wasn't trying to monetize it, but going viral doesn't mean money either. It might be temporary exposure, and it might for 15, it's like the 15 minutes of fame,
Right.
right? It's like for 15 minutes you might get some traction, but if that's where it ends and you don't have anything to offer these people, it doesn't stick around.
Mhm. So, what do people do to build a platform, and where should they invest their time? And obviously, it's different for different people in different industries and things like that. But if someone's like, I want to build my platform, where do they start?
The thing with building the platform practically is people are more so looking for consistency than they are numbers. People aren't looking at the number of followers you have or the number of likes you get, although it is a hit to the ego a little bit, right? We want to see that people are engaging and we want to see that people are learning from the content we put out there. But if I go to somebody's page and I'm like, man, they show up every day, they show up every day and they're putting out value, I automatically trust them because they're passionate enough to
Mm.
continue to do it even when their numbers aren't skyrocketing. So we always tell people aim for consistency. Aim for consistency and always provide value. Um, the the followers, fingers crossed, will eventually come, But when you're talking about your business, and again, it goes back to this capacity thing that I described earlier. It's like, really, what is your threshold? What is your capacity? What do you want your business to look like? Because if you're a coach and you know that you need 15 to 20 clients on your books to make it a really successful business, and you have 1,000 people engaging with your content, that is more than enough people to make a really good amount of money. Like, your people are there. And so it's really going past the mindset of the numbers. Don't need millions of followers to make millions of dollars. Brand Builders Group functioned the whole first year and a half of our business with no website and no Instagram handles. Wow. And people are like, how are you a branding and marketing company that had no social presence? And it came back down to the reputation of our founders. People knew what they were good at. Yeah, they're offline relationships. And so when we look at building a platform, social media is important. We want you to do it, but it's not the thing that is going to ultimately drive your business to completion or the very end. We like to look at it holistically and say you need to show up well in all the areas you need to. Offline relationships, reputation, consistency on social, but all of that needs a passion for what you're doing. And if the passion isn't there, it's going to show up online as well. And so platform growth is slow and steady, like numbers wise. Platform growth is slow and steady. And where we see clients actually experience like expedited platform growth as a personal brand, because you see all these people online, Amy Porterfield, Ed Milet, the big personal brands that people are like, man, how did they do it? How did they get there? And it's because they grew consistently, not offline, but they grew consistently to a point in their business where they had all the necessary things in place to then say, let's put some money behind the social platforms we have. Let's run some ads. Let's get people's eyes on the thing that we've created. And then numbers go up. But you can't put ads and money behind your socials if you don't have the online infrastructure to handle the leads and the people that are coming your way. And we don't typically see clients get to that until like year 3, maybe, in their personal branding journey. And that can vary depending on how much support you have. Like, do you have a team? Do you have people to build this for you? Or are you a one-man band?
And so if you're just getting started, if there's something that you really want to do in this world, and I'll just put myself out there, like I am really intentional on growing this podcast. And right now we're recording and it's April, and I'm pre-recording a whole bunch of episodes because my goal is to be out every week for the rest of the year. And I'm retweaking some things thanks to Brand Builders Group and working with you, and it's been really, really fun. But sometimes you're going on this journey, and the other thing that's so interesting to note, and I always think about, it's like, who knows what lives people are living behind their Instagram handles. For me, I've had a son with a lot of needs, and it's very overwhelming. And it's very important for me to show up there too in my life. And I think it's making me a better human. So I'm just going to continue to go with that, and it's going to make me better at the things that I want to do. But if you're in that place and you're like, ooh, I really want to ask so-and-so to be on my podcast, or to do an Instagram live, or to come in to one of my events, but I don't have the following or this or that. And so you get a little bit insecure about asking them. I've gotten better about it because I just think a no is really someone else's yes opportunity. I mean, that's kind of how I see it. But what do you say to somebody that's like that? Because we all have to start somewhere. Like, we all can't show up here, with a best listened to podcast, a best-selling author. We all are starting somewhere. What kind of encouragement, I guess, do you have for people who are in that place who are like, hey, I'm at this, and how do I break into some of these? How should I approach people that maybe have a better optics than I do, but certainly, are also just human beings?
Yeah. So we always say build relationships before you need them. So you want to start now. You may not get a yes now, But
Mm-hmm.
you want to start building those relationships before you ever need them. Because in, let's say, 5 years, Jess wants to launch a book, right? Or I want to launch a book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to spend the 5 months right before my book launch frantically searching for people who are going to support me or who can come and endorse me, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Start now, build those relationships because you genuinely value what they're doing
Mm-hmm.
or you genuinely are curious in what they're building, and let that relationship grow organically. So we always say build relationships before you need them. Now, in a very practical sense, we kind of use this like 20 rule of thumb. So you should say yes to people who are 20, who have a following size at least 20% less than you. So
Mm-hmm.
if somebody comes to you and they're like, "Hey, will you collaborate with me?" You say yes, looking at following size, and it's like, "Okay, they're about 20% less than what I have." And so if I say yes to them and my people engage, they will probably go up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in return, you should be pitching to people who are about 20% ahead or 20% bigger than you. So you kind of live in this bubble a little bit. And then the bubble shifts, right? Because as you grow, you get closer and you can start reaching out to more people. But we see that people usually follow somewhat of that like
Mm-hmm.
formula. And so you have more of a opportunity to get a yes. So you do it for others, and hopefully others will do it for you. Because there has to be benefit both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a certain level of platform, those types of people are probably the people who are looking up with you, right? To
Mm-hmm.
other brands, other personal brands, other individuals. And so then you can all kind of join the journey together.
Together. I love that.
Hmm. I would
So,
also say it's a numbers game.
yeah,
Like when you're
absolutely.
doing outreach to people, if you reach out to, we see this a lot. People are like, I reached out to 10 people and I only got one yes. I must be a failure. I was like, that's a pretty good conversion
Yeah.
rate.
Yeah.
Like that's a great conversion rate. If out of 10 people, one person tells you yes, it's a win.
Mm-hmm.
It's a numbers game. You reach out to 50 people and you get five,
It's
it's
pretty
worth
good.
it.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. And so I think a lot of personal branding is really looking at how much of a numbers game it is and not getting discouraged when somebody tells you no.
Mm. So you work with people all over the country and you
Mhm.
get to see like a snapshot into so many different people's businesses and their lives and what they want to create, which I think is really fun. And I want to ask you a little bit about that sort of in the macro sense of like
Yeah.
what you're noticing. So I'm curious like
Mhm.
about you because I want people to meet you as well as not just BBG or what you're doing. Like what do you love about working with clients and what are you noticing in the people that you're working with?
Oh my gosh. The best part about working with clients is that I get paid to learn. Like
Mm,
I literally get paid to learn, which is a wild concept for me to say, and I'm so grateful because my job is not to know every person's industry, and I don't know every person's industry.
mm,
But I ask really good questions, and I can tell you how to build a brand, right?
mm,
So at any time I get on a call or an event with clients, I am in awe of how much I get to learn from them.
mm,
And I literally tell my clients, "Hey, will you teach me like I've never learned this before?"
mm,
Because that is how a client comes to you and your brand. Because if the client already knew how to do it, they'd do it themselves.
mhm,
So I really go down to like the basics with my clients, and I tell them, teach me like I have no idea what you're talking about.
mm,
And I get to see my clients like light up as they're trying to explain this to me, but then I also get to learn. So it's like the best job
mm,
ever. I'm not a mom, but I have so many mom fitness clients. I don't know how it happened, but that just
mhm,
happened. And I'm like, man, if one day I ever become a mom, I'm going to know exactly what I need to do for my health and
mhm,
fitness. And
mm,
it's like, I got to learn that through work.
mhm,
Um, and so that's the best part about working with clients. What I see as like trends in personal brands in general throughout, because I have clients anywhere from that live in London to Mexico, all across the US. Like I have people everywhere. Um, I think the limiting beliefs that people experience when trying to put themselves out there and build their personal brands is a universal concept.
Hmm.
Everybody feels like, I don't know if I have what it takes, or I don't know if what I'm trying to teach is important enough. And I think that's really interesting to see. It's like everybody feels that way. Even the big personal brands that we know, like, and trust, they probably have a little bit of that too. To be like, can I really do it? Is what I'm putting out there enough? And that has been really eye-opening for me to see in clients, because I'm like, man, you guys all do have it.
Hmm.
And there's space for all of you too.
Hmm. So you work with people all over the country and the world, and I'm wondering if you can share, like, what are the things that the people that you feel like they're really doing it, they're being successful, they're getting to where they want to go. What are those people doing that other people aren't? And if all of your clients did X, they would get to where they want to be. What are a couple of those things?
Well, they would stop viewing their personal brand as a separate project or a separate entity from their business.
Mm.
The people who are really making it work are the people who see this as a joint effort. They are creating time and space and energy in their day to be like, what I need to do and how I need to show up for the brand is just as important as the green or money making hours in my business, because they go hand in hand. I see people all the time, especially, like, for example, with real estate agents, they're like, I was too busy. I had to go show houses because that's what makes me money. And I'm like, slow down. Your personal brand is also making you money because it's a trust accelerator.
Mhm.
But people get wrapped up in the busyness of business,
Mm.
and they don't see the connection between the two. Or people say, I don't need a brand at all. And that's not the route either. So it's the people who are finding the synergy and the connection, and really view the personal brand as part of the business instead of separate, that are seeing the most growth, seeing the most traction, and just really making it work.
Mhm. And so they're playing the long game. Is that a fair
Mm-hmm.
thing to
They're
say?
playing the long game. They're playing the long game, and they don't see the brand building as a chore,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't see the effort as something that's going to slow them down. They really see it as, okay, if I play the long game and I am intentional about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, I know there's going to be a return.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a culture that is like, wants really fast results, instant gratification type thing. And remember, we remove the term personal branding and we think about just reputation. Reputation isn't instant.
Mm-mm.
Reputation is built over time. Reputation is built because you show up the same way for years, and then people start to recognize it and talk about it and all of those things. And I think people really just continue to have that disconnect between a brand being growth and numbers versus a personal brand being who you are and your reputation. Reputation's for the long game. Reputation is what's going to stick around when you're not here anymore.
Mm. Yeah,
Not your
people,
Instagram followers.
right. They talk about a legacy. Your reputation is your legacy, arguably.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
your personal brand is your legacy.
yeah.
Your expertise and the things that the impact you can have on people, the reputation, is what you're going to be able to leave behind. Your business may shut down. Your offerings will stop selling eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But your expertise and your teaching and who you were as a leader and a person, that's going to be around forever.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So I'm curious, you spend so much time talking about other people's missions and passions in their life. I'm wondering if, kind of as we get closer to the end of the conversation, if you could just tell us what are some of yours and how do you want to make impact in the world besides maybe or alongside of helping people build their brands?
Oh, this is always such a fun question. Well, I will say that one of the best things about working within a company that builds personal brands is they really encourage each of the individual employees and strategists to have their own personal brand.
Mm.
It's it's what makes us unique. We bring certain things to the table, but they also live what we teach. They know that no matter what, we have passions and reputations and things that we're pouring into. And so, interestingly enough, when we first got hired, the strategist actually paired with strategists so
Oh,
we
cool.
could help each other build a
Mhm.
brand. And for a really long time, I was like, I don't want to build anything. I
Mhm.
was like, the type of put me in coach, I want to help everybody else. Um, and so I'm still figuring it out a little bit. I have been in a season of transition. I moved to Nashville recently so I could be closer to the team. And I am kind of, in a sense, building a brand around the ability to make change
Mhm.
as a, like, I don't want to say older, but an older 20s
Mhm.
young female who hasn't really done things the way that you would expect
Mhm.
a 20 something to do with their life. But particularly, like, where I grew up and where I'm from a really small town in Texas. And when I say small town, it's like one high school, one grocery store type feel. And people didn't really leave
Mhm.
when you graduated high school. It was you graduated high school, you maybe went to the community college, and you probably became a teacher there. And I did that very differently. I got a couple jobs and I worked from home, and people were like, what is this girl doing? Does she have a career? And
Mhm.
then I moved away. And so my passion is really letting young women know that you don't have to do things the way that you were raised or the way that culture in the area you were in says that's the right way.
Mhm.
And that every journey, every path looks a little bit different for people. Um, I have a passion for letting women know that just
Mhm.
because the traditional path of a woman says that you should do this, it's not the only option. Um, and it took me a couple years to put that into words
Mhm.
and really say, I think this is what I'm doing because I was just living it. I was taking
Mhm.
chances and I was doing things differently. Um, but I want people to know that and
Mhm.
continue to live into that as they grow.
I love that because back to what we were talking about before about social media and platforms, it's like there's like this recipe that everyone is supposed to follow, right? I mean, whether it's, whether you're in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, your life is supposed to look like this. And so many people's lives don't look like that, which is what makes people interesting and different and human. And, what I find very interesting about people, but I think you're giving women, the permission to be whoever they are created to be and to live out the life in the order that life is happening for them.
It's happening.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's just a really amazing and somewhat countercultural message today. And so
Yeah.
I think you're going to reach a lot of people with that. I love that. And you're so
Yeah.
good at what you do and so fun to work with, that I'm excited for you to share that with people.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So before we go, I just want to ask, I ask all my guests this question, and then I want to tell everyone listening how they can learn more about Brand Builders Group and get a free call if they're interested in building a personal brand as well. But I like to ask everyone, what is one thing that you love about yourself because of hardships or disappointments that you face? So it would be like, I love this about Larissa because it's been grown through adversity in my life.
Ooh, so I say it in a statement, kind of like that.
Yeah, like what's something just
Okay.
like last week somebody's like, I just don't give up. And I love that about
Mm,
myself because I learned that through, whatever in my life. You don't have to share the circumstance, but we all have something that's born within us because we face a disappointment or a challenge. And
mm.
I think those are such really foundational and important parts of who we are. And I love listening to what every different person says theirs is.
Yeah. I would say that I love how big my heart is for
Mm,
people. I always tend to see the good in individuals, and I'm really quick to give second chances. And
mm,
I love that about myself.
mm,
Um, I've had just interesting times in my 20s, and I've been in interesting relationships where I've been really hurt. Friends romantic relationships, all of the things. And one thing I really enjoy is that my heart has stayed soft. It's really easy for people's hearts to harden and automatically see the bad in people or be cautious and weary of new relationships and connection. And I love that I can see the good in people, even when people haven't always been good. And I love that about me.
I love that about you too. That's so wonderful. So, how can people learn more about Brand Builders Group and working with a strategist like you, so that they can build their own personal brand and share their mission with the world too?
Yes, so Jess will have in the show notes a link to what we call a free brand call. We offer a 1 hour strategy session for all new clients where you get paired with somebody on our team to allow them to hear about you and your mission and what you're really interested in putting out into the world. And they can help you see a path, whether that be with Brand Builders Group or just kind of figuring it out yourself. But we have a 1 hour free brand strategy call that you can sign up for. And then within our membership, you have an opportunity to join a program that is either go at your own pace or go a little faster with support and work with a strategist like me. The best part about our team is we have a very select group of strategists that all have very individualized skills and personalities and strengths. And our team is tiny but mighty. We have about 13 strategists on our team that are really intentionally trained and taught and guided so that every personal brand that we work with, you're not just a number. You are a person, you're a part of the BBG family, and you get a strategist to support you and really join in on the vision. And I think that's what makes our company really special.
Yeah, absolutely. So check out the link in our show notes. And I just want to give one other little plug while I have the microphone here. One of the things that I love about BBG is that I have met a lot of different people who are, like me, mission driven. We might not have the same thing that we're mission driven about, but we're mission driven people. And when you are on your own in the world behind this microphone or your computer, it can be lonely. And you can feel like, gosh, is anyone else struggling with this? Or is anyone else desirous of this or thinking about this? And it's given me an opportunity to connect with some amazing people that way. And the other thing that I want to say is that historically I've hired a lot of different people to help me with silos like social media or very specific things, but that's not really building a personal brand. And this has helped me think about it in a different way. I have a marketing background, so this comes somewhat easy to me, but it makes sense to me because it's very holistic. And so if you're listening today, I hope you learned something from our conversation and really enjoyed it. But I really want to encourage you to get out in the world with your mission, because the world really needs you to be who you were created to be. And we can't wait for you to do that. So check out the link in the show notes, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Larissa, for being here. It was wonderful to spend time with you.
Thank you for having me, Jess.
Thank you for listening to Becoming Heartstrong. I hope you found today's episode inspiring and applicable to your life. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Before I go, this is just a quick reminder that I believe in you, and I believe that you too have the ability to become heartstrong. I'll chat with you soon.